All right. Well, I am super excited to be presenting Regina Edwards, who is an award-winning family law attorney in Atlanta, to you today. Smith.ai, as a virtual receptionist service, has had the pleasure of working with Regina for years now, I think. And you're hearing me, Maddie Martin. I'm the head of growth and education here. And we like to present experts to our audience from various, industries and walks of life, domains and expertise levels, to help fellow business owners, operators, people who are on the ground trying to run a business efficiently and sustainably and in a way that scales, and in a way that scales actually now, given what we're going through with COVID. How do we adjust to the new normal with still a lot of the basic principles in place? So yes, we're focused on the law firm and improving intake today, but also I will highlight that many of the principles that Regina is going to share apply to other businesses. And this isn't the first time that we have done a sort of legal specific, but all industry inclusive presentation. So a lot of the examples will be, from a lawyer's perspective, as Regina is, but I think that if you open your mind and you see, how can I implement this process or system or solution in my own business, if it's not a law firm, that can be very helpful. So we'll talk for, about an hour today. And as questions come through, I will ask Regina if there are pockets of opportunity, and then we can also address questions at the end. And happy to have people at the end, or as sort of Regina wraps up her presentation or her talk, bring other people on to, voice your questions or be on video. No problem at all with that. So make sure that you're writing down your questions and don't be shy. That's why we have this format. And really excited to be presenting Regina to you today. And if we can be a solution to you as a receptionist service or chat, Regina can share her special promo code with you so that we give thanks to her and credit her for the referral, because we know that, she has brought many of you here today. And just ready to give the floor to Regina. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. So I'm actually going to go off of what you put in the initial advertisement. There's kind of 4 things, and I think we can just talk sort of broad overview and then drill down to each of those 4 things. So with intake, I think Maddie hit it on the head where, first of all, you have to identify what your goals are for intake. Then you need to pick the right intake software. I've kind of added to it, you also have to pick the right person answering your phone or your answering service. Then build your intake system to meet your business targets, and then automate and delegate work for predictable success. So the first one seems easy, but it's not necessarily. For example, identify your intake goals. So that really just depends on where you are in your practice, where you are in your firm. For me, I'll tell you what my goals are. My goals are, I am trying to essentially figure out if it's a client that I want to work with. I want to figure out if they have an issue I can fix. I want to find out if they have an issue I want to fix. I am trying to figure out if they can afford my services, and whether or not it's a client that personality-wise I want to work with. Now, obviously, that's a lot to sort of try to get through the intake process. So there's a few layers to it of how I kind of get to my ideal client through the process that I have. So I'm trying to identify these clients. I get probably anywhere between 7 to 15 new potential client calls per day, which for a family law firm is probably on the high side. So I'm really trying to screen these people to make sure they have a problem that I can solve. They have a problem, like I said, that I want to solve, and that there's some achievable outcome that I can get for them. Because I think as a law firm, not everybody that calls has an issue that we can help with, or it may not be within our domain of expertise. We may want to refer it elsewhere. Sometimes the client, it's obvious, is going to have a personality conflict with you. They're very demanding. They're rude to your staff, and then nice to you. Those kinds of people I don't tolerate either. So there's just a lot of screening that goes on in the initial call. And then of course I kind of want to feel out whether or not they can afford my services before I even go through the process of a consultation. So drilling down into that a little bit, how do I do that? So the first step is I have an answering service, obviously, which is Smith.ai. I wouldn't call myself a true solo because I have a paralegal, but I don't have an associate or someone continually working on my cases for me. So I'm the only lawyer really working in my firm. I have one paralegal and I have an intake specialist. So when clients call, they really want to talk to someone right away. And this really is going to be specific to the type of business that you have. Everybody knows for PI attorneys, you have to have someone answer the call. People that are in an accident, they are not going to listen to a voicemail and wait politely 24 hours for a call. It's just never going to happen. You have to have someone answering the call live. For family law attorneys, I think it's less important. However, I sort of use that initial call as a little bit of a screening process. I just got a message from Smith.ai, I think maybe about 30 minutes ago, where they explain the intake process to the client. And my process is this. They will gather some information in a form. They will submit the form as if they are the client. It immediately goes into my system. My intake coordinator will call the person back. I usually say that there's a 1 hour slot each day, and if you missed this hour's slot for today, then you'll get a call back tomorrow. That's generally not the case. But the point is, I'm kind of prepping them to expect they may not get a call today. So there's plenty of people that say that's not acceptable, I'm calling somebody else. Great, call somebody else. That's really not a problem for me, because someone that is that anxious and wants that sort of responsiveness from a working attorney right away, it's just not something that's going to fit into my business plan. It's just not going to work for us. So I get messages all the time that says that people don't want to fill out my intake form. They don't want to give me an email address, and that's fine. That's a lost lead for me, and I don't really consider that a loss, because if they're not conforming to how you want your relationship to work from the beginning, it's just going to get worse later on. So Smith takes the information. I can show you the form, I think, with the share screen. We'll see how this works. Form.
And actually, it's funny, Regina, while you're getting that, one thing that I'll mention, Maddie Martin here again from Smith.ai, is that what actually prompted this webinar is that Regina would drop into so many of our talks and so generously share this form that I'm sure has had many iterations. And I finally just said to her, Regina, like, let's get you on and talk about intake, because you're generously dropping into so many of others' webinars. I think it's time to give you one of your own.
Oh, yeah, sure. So this is the form that I use, and I use a service called Delegating. I know a lot of you, especially if you're attorneys, you have intake, or you're using either Clio or MyCase or Practice Panther or Lawmatics. They all pretty much do the same thing except in different ways. I like Delegating because it's very inexpensive. I paid $600 and I have a forever plan. So I don't have to pay monthly, it's forever. So unless they go out of business, I'm keeping them forever. And the great thing about these forms is when I consider it sort of a magic button. So the important thing about intake is you want the client to feel that they are your client from the minute that they call your office. So having an entering service is not just a service to just, oh, we'll get the information, the attorney will give you a call back. You're missing so many opportunities if that's what you're doing. So I'll explain how this form works. So obviously it's pretty simple. We just enter our information. A lot of my stuff is going to be pre-filled, so we'll just do that. So if the answering service is taking the call, they're going to put in the client's information. And these are some basic questions that I've created that they're baseline questions just for me to determine whether or not it's a case I could help with and whether or not I actually have a conflict. So for those non-attorneys, obviously I can't have a consultation with someone and take their case if I've had a consultation with someone on the other side. So that is an important step, to gather the name of the opposing party to make sure that I have not met with them before. So this form has that information. So I gather their name, the other party's name, which is in this box. Is there a case in progress? Yes or no? If there is a case in progress, what county is it in? I only practice in a few counties in Georgia. So I see something like Taliaferro County, Taliaferro County, I think is how you pronounce it. There's like 3 people that live there. I'm not going to Taliaferro County. So I can immediately just respond to the answering service email and say, tell the client that I don't service this county and give them a number to call in order to find an attorney in that area. Does the person have children with the other party? Then I like Smith.ai to get sort of a brief overview of what's going on with the case. I'm just gonna type that. For example, I've been married for 24 years. We've got 2 kids together. My husband has said that he wants to file for divorce. I'm not sure what to do. So they fill out this form and they hit send. So once they hit that, it's automatically going to come to me. So the key for your practice or your firm is, what is that send button going to do for you? And the answer is pretty much anything you want it to. So how do I stop sharing? Here we go. So that form has come directly to me. I review it very quickly. And like I said, if it's a case that I know I have no interest in because of the county or something else, I immediately have Smith.ai decline the call for me. If it's something I'm interested in, the form goes directly to my intake coordinator, who will call back and get additional information. At that point, I'll review those notes and either offer a consultation, or I'll decline, or maybe I'll ask follow-up questions. Some clients call knowing they're going to hire me and skip the whole consultation process. So sometimes it's just a matter of we're sending them the fee agreement. But this is all happening behind the scenes without my involvement. And that's really the key, is you're trying to remove yourself from the logjam of the intake process. So when they hit that send button, this is what happens from my end. So with Dubsado, it starts a workflow, and it's a workflow that I've created. So in my particular case, they get an email, and the email says, thank you so much for contacting our firm. It shows a link to my video. I've got a really nice, crisp video, which, shows me walking through, Piedmont Park in 6-inch heels, which definitely helps describe how I practice law. But it's a great video and clients love it, and it's a vanity video, but clients love it. So if you've got a video, either one of those highly produced vanity videos, or if you have specific videos tailored to what the client is calling about, you can have a workflow automatically set up to send them that video in response to them calling. So that's what happens when Smith takes the message and hits that send button. The client is automatically going to get an email with this particular video. Also in Dubsado, and if you guys are using Lawmatics or any of the other ones, it's the same thing. You can set up whatever workflow you want. It's the same process. So you can set it up to send your videos. You can direct them to different websites. If you've written a book or a pamphlet, anything, have that automatically sent. You want the client to feel that from the beginning, they are invested in you. Because if it's just a note, if you're using an answering service as a note-taking service, it's really just sort of a waste of time. So the workflow really helps the client feel that they're invested with you already, because they're getting an email right away saying, hey, thanks so much for calling. Here's what to expect next. In the meantime, do A, B, and C. I like to give people homework, especially in family law cases. A lot of times it's cases where something has happened before. So if it's a divorce, there's really not going to be anything that's happened before. But we do a lot of custody modifications, child support modifications, where there have been prior court orders. So my email actually says, if there has been a prior court order, or if you are trying to modify, go ahead and upload your document. So immediately they're given homework. They're not just given an email that says, hey, we're going to call you when we get around to. It's, hey, thanks for calling. Here's a video. Here's more about my practice. Here's more about me. Or here's what I need you to do in order for us to move forward. So a lot of times the clients immediately upload their documents, and that sort of helps me determine, well, which client is really serious about hiring me versus someone that's not. So a lot of the clients, upload the documents right away. And that does a couple of things. It gives me the information I need to help determine whether or not I want to take the case. And it also helps them feel like they're invested in my firm, and they can see how well my systems work and how seamless everything is. And it makes them feel more comfortable about working with us, which is obviously the goal, is a comfort level, especially when you're hiring a service professional such as an attorney. So at that point, my intake coordinator will call the client back, and she'll take very detailed notes. Those detailed notes, she'll probably take about 20 minutes to talk to the client. I will review those notes in probably less than 30 seconds, and I've made a decision as to whether or not I want to take the case or whether or not I want to pursue moving forward. So the system that I have with Dubsado allows me to just sort of immediately make notes to her about what I want to do next, task it to her, and it moves along the next step in the pipeline. So every single component of your intake process really can be automated. So we've got probably 25 different canned emails in the Dubsado system. And again, I'm just using Dubsado as a euphemism for Lawmatics or whatever Clio intake that you're using for your automatic responses. So if you're declining a case, one button is decline. If you're referring it to someone else, one button refer. If you need additional information, that's a canned email. But the more communication and contact you have with that client from the beginning, the less likely they are to sort of hang up and call somebody else, which is obviously what you're trying to prevent.
So Regina, can I interrupt you for a moment?
Sure.
Just as there are a few questions that are coming through and I want to make sure that we tackle
them. I know, I kept getting distracted and they're all different, so yeah.
They're all not set to the end. So first question actually came a little bit before Aisha's, then I'll get to that one. What email system are you using to send out that automation? Is that through Dubsado? Is it another system?
It's all Dubsado, yes.
Okay.
So I will share my screen again, maybe.
And while you're doing that, can you answer if the intake coordinator is a full-time employee or actually an employee at all or a contractor?
She's a contractor. I've actually never met her. She lives in South Georgia. She has an awesome Southern accent. I think I found her on Upwork. So at the time I was actually looking for something a little bit different and she really didn't kind of seem to meet my needs for that, but I saw that she had worked as a personal injury full-time intake coordinator. I'm like, well, great. If she's done PI intake, she can handle family law intake. So I just,
absolutely. Yeah. So that's a special skill. And also I think, you know, the PI intake specialists are really keen on how to be sensitive, but also sell and work towards a goal of conversion.
Right.
So that's an area where we see a lot of expertise.
And it requires, you know, a lot of empathy as well, because with family law, sometimes people are in traumatic situations and they're looking for someone to not only say, yes, we can help, this is what we do, but we care, because in most areas of law, but especially in family law, the client wants to know that you care from the beginning and that you're just not, hey, give me your money and I'll solve your problem, or maybe not. They want to know that you care. So that's an important component to intake as well. So this is what the form that I just filled out comes across and looks like. There's nothing in the notes section because I haven't added anything, but when it comes across, it'll be in the notes section. So if I want my paralegal, the intake coordinator, to review something, I would just say review and call client. And then I would task it to her by using this drop-down menu. This is something that's completely customizable. Probably any system that you have is going to have some sort of funnel to put it in. These are all the different funnels that I've created. You can see there's a lot. So RIE to review is obviously me. The one that gets used the second most is Lisa, call the client back. I usually only follow up with people once. I know people tell you with intake, you're supposed to follow up repeatedly. Probably with PI, criminal, you may want to do that. With family law, quite frankly, I'm not doing it. I'm gonna call you once. Leave a message. I may call you twice. That's it. I'm leaving it alone. So I have a hot lead category. If someone has been scheduled for a consultation, there's a category for that. So there's just all these different funnels. If I refer cases out to other attorneys, I actually have funnels for that. My single law firm is part of a different partnership, so I actually have intake forms for them as well. So it's all these different funnels where you can just instantly glance at what the status of the intake is at that point. So what she will do is, if she talks to the client, then she'll obviously put the notes here and I'll review it and she'll task it back to me. So this is the section where I review the notes and then tell her what the next step is. So Dubsado does a lot of things, and again, most of your intake systems are going to do the same thing. You can send invoices, you can create appointments. I personally do not have a system where clients can schedule their own appointments. That's just a personal preference. I like to control the people that jump on my calendar and when they jump on my calendar, but you can automate that as well. And that's something that any intake service and Smith can help with. So if you want them to schedule your appointments, they will schedule your appointments. And there's no one size fits all. I personally like to review all of the notes, have several people talk to the potential client before I even accept the consultation. I am sure that is not everybody's preference. So if you just would prefer to know if it's a case that I can handle in an area that I can handle it, yes, I will accept the consultation. I want it scheduled. That is something that the intake service can do for you as well. So they can take a few basic notes, and based on whatever script you give Smith.ai, they can say, yes, this fits within the attorney's parameters. We can go ahead and schedule you for an appointment. If you're charging for appointments for non-PI attorneys and professionals, they can collect the payment. They can send the link to the payment to the client. They can set the appointment, put on the calendar. They can do all of those things for you. I personally just don't do it that way. I like to have my intake coordinator schedule the appointment. That's just a personal preference, but there is a way to remove yourself completely from the intake, and that just depends on just how much you want to be involved in it. You can send emails from this portal. This is where all the canned emails are. This is the initial email. Hopefully everybody can see this. This is the initial email that you get anytime somebody, oops, sorry. I think I accidentally sent it to myself. I did. Okay, so here it is. This is the initial email that all clients get when they call and they get the answering service. Try to blow it up a little bit. So all of these links are active. I like to take this opportunity to give them the link to my upload system so they can upload documents. This is a link to my website that has several videos about my firm. This is another video here. I use third-party legal financing. There's a link there. So obviously this is completely customizable. So if you just think about it and create a list of all of the things that you would want your client to know about you from the moment they call your office, just put it here. Because once Smith takes the call and once they hit the send button, this can be automated where the client gets this information. If you want to send them a book, if you want to send them a scheduling link, all of that can be in this initial email. I've got tons of different canned emails. If we set an appointment, for example, that is here. This is the automatic email. All we have to do is put in the day and the time, the address. I require prepayment for my consultations. So in order for clients to schedule with me, they have to pay the $400. And if they don't pay at least 24 hours for the consultation it's scheduled, that is all explained in this email. There's a link to my pay site here. If they have any questions, they can consult this page. Again, there's a link to my financing, and then my fancy crisp video link is always here as well. So I think the emails are important for a number of reasons. It helps you keep track of, obviously, the communication that you have with each potential client, and it gives them an opportunity to see the wide variety of your services, how responsive you are, and how working with you is going to be from the very beginning.
So Regina, so many questions have come through as you were talking, and I think there's a lot around how does Delegating compare to maybe Filevine or Lawmatics? What are the security components that make you feel comfortable with respect to multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication? And then there's also a question about texting ability, potentially within Delegating, or that perhaps integrates with it.
So how I would describe this data, it's really, it was meant for creatives. I don't know that it was sort of meant for attorneys, but we sort of have hijacked it. And there's kind of like this core group of us that have used it for intake for attorneys. So with the text question, the answer to that is, do they have a specific text messaging portal? No, but you can fix that. So they have email. So all you have to do is put it in a particular format. So if you just Google how to convert email to text, you can send a text from an email. So if you have their phone number, and this is an example, I think it's like 555, whatever the phone number is, at verizon.net. I don't exactly know what it is, but it's something like that. But you include that in the email as well, and you can send simultaneously an email and a text to the client. I personally don't like to do that. I think that's helpful for, I think, maybe criminal attorneys, PI attorneys. As a family law attorney, I like to keep a sort of level of separation between business and personal, and I think texting sort of blurs the line, so I personally don't text. So I know people have a variety of reasons they want to do it. If you want to do it, that's fine. It is possible to do it. Somebody asked, why did I choose Dubsado over Lawmatics? I demoed Lawmatics. I've demoed all of them. And the simple answer is Lawmatics was too much for what I wanted to do. What I wanted was a simply streamlined workflow where I'm getting the information, I'm reviewing the information, and I'm sending out a few emails, and I can also send contracts. Now, of course, Lawmatics does that, and it does a million more things that I do not need. I'm also pretty cheap. I don't want to spend what Lawmatics charges people monthly. So when Dubsado offered the free forever plan, I jumped on it. That was, I think, at least a year ago. So it's more than paid for itself. Another question is it similar to FileVine? The answer is no. I have used FileVine. FileVine is a practice management system. Dubsado is intake only. I'm also a little different in that I like to separate all of my systems. So even when I was using a standard practice management system, I really did not like having my intake buried in there. And that's because I get a lot of calls. So if you're getting 15 new client calls per day, your contacts in your PM system are just going to be bulging with all of these people that you just may never hear from again. So I like to keep all of my intake separate. It makes it a lot easier to run a conflict check. And for me, just the sort of the separation of the systems is kind of what works for me. And Robin asked, at what point do you actually speak to the client? It's a great question. Sometimes never, until I'm retained. So with uncontested cases, it's usually never. I send them the fee agreement, they pay me, I work on the case, I get them divorced, we're done. With the more complicated cases, if they want a consultation and they're willing to pay the $400 consultation fee, that's when I talk to them, because after they pay the $400 consultation fee and we set up a Zoom meeting, that's the first time I personally am going to be speaking to the client. There may be a few exceptions. For example, if I get a referral from a friend and it's, it's just a well-known referral source and they really want me to personally handle it from the beginning, I may give the client an introductory call at that point. But for 98% of the intake, I don't talk to the client until after they hire me or until after they pay for a consultation. What are the new messages? How does Smith.ai gain access to your intake form? I give it to them. It's just a link. So it's a web link that is accessible from anywhere. So I'm assuming it's in their portal that's assigned to me. So the person just clicks on the link and fills out the form and hits send, and that's it.
So there was another question about Dubsado using two-factor, multi-factor authentication, strong password policies. So how are you securing what's uploaded and making sure that you're protecting that client confidentiality and information?
I'm not having people actually upload anything to Dubsado. So I've researched enough. To me, the security is secure enough that I'm comfortable with it. But it's sort of similar to any intake system that you use. There's always probably going to be flaws, but I don't have anyone upload documents to that site. I use my own system, which is not my own, but it's Ignite, which is EGNYTE. That's my cloud document service, and I send them a link, and that's where my clients send the documents securely, and that is definitely top of the line, 100% secure. So when they're sending me the documents, they're actually sending it outside of this Dubsado. They're just clicking on a link from the email, but it's actually taking them to a completely different system. So someone asked, have I had pushback from a client for producing documents prior to being retained? The answer is no. For some reason, they're just really anxious to show me all of their stuff, which I think is helpful. Because a lot of times I can review the documents and I can just tell from the documents, it's just not a client that I want to have a consultation with. It's not a client that I want to have a meeting with. I had somebody, when I said, hey, please send me information related to your case, they uploaded 1,458 files. That was a sign that this was not going to be an ideal client for me. So most clients really don't have an issue with it. I don't know whether or not they should. Maybe they should, but they have no problem just uploading their documents. And I guess it's because they feel secure because they're sending it to an attorney. But most of them are more than happy that someone answered the call, that they immediately got an email, and they immediately got something to do. So I actually think they like the invitation to send documents. How did you come up with the price, the initial consultation? That's my hourly rate. I am flat fee, so I normally don't bill by the hour, but when I was billing by the hour, it was $400 an hour. So that's my consultation fee. So another question is, once they hit send, does the information go to me, the intake coordinator, at the same time? And the answer is yes. So that is a cloud-based system, and they both can see it. However, I take the first pass at it. So I have it coded, so as soon as they hit send, it drops into the funnel that says RIE to review. And I have it set up so the initial email to the client goes out 15 minutes later, and that's for a reason. That gives me a time to look at it. I can decline the case, I can refer it out before I can actually stop the workflow in its tracks if I know I'm not going to go any further.
Regina, how do you handle questions to Smith.ai? What is some of the direction that you give the receptionist around asking for pricing, or can you tell me how much it's going to cost, or even how long it's going to take, or what's involved, or what's the likelihood that I'm going to win, so to speak? How do you sort of handle those sort of stickier questions where you want to be helpful, but you don't want to guarantee anything or commit?
Right. That's really a great benefit of having an answering service, because they, by definition, don't know any of that stuff. Which is why I feel like it's better to have an outside answering service versus a paralegal who actually might know the answer and be tempted to give legal advice, which is a terrible, terrible idea. So by being the answering service, they just say, hey, look, we can't answer these questions, but what we're going to do is this. We're going to send your information. The intake coordinator and Regina will look over it, and we'll give you a call back, and those questions will be answered. So, you know, if a client is demanding an answer to a legal question on the first call, that's not my client. That's not the kind of client that I'm going to work with, because the clients that I work with are pretty reasonable people, and they know that that's not going to happen. They know they're going to have a consultation. They know that I have to hear their entire story, review documents before I can give them advice, because any attorney that's giving advice, you know, unless it's general statute of limitations based on a 30-second phone call, that's not what you should be doing. And I think most reasonable clients understand that. So I really don't get a lot of pushback about that.
So Regina, do you find that your clients are more prepared or more well-educated about legal services than the average bear? Because we know that there are a lot of law firms who have clients coming to them that are not as well-educated and don't necessarily understand what constitutes legal advice. How have you sort of educated your community, maybe your referral partners, any of sort of the advertising channels? Was that part of your crisp video and content on your website? Like, how do you sort of train those potential clients and partners in the community to bring those potential clients into the fold who already have, you know, more closely aligned expectations?
Well, I mean, the reality is I do get some people that have completely unreasonable expectations about what to expect when to call a law office. And I obviously don't have the time to call everybody back and educate them and say, hey, probably the best way to get an answer to your question is not to call the answering service and say, I want to talk to an effing lawyer right now about the problem. I just kind of let them weed themselves out. And I think Smith has pretty good intuitive receptionists that can tell when it's time to just sort of end an engagement with a client if they just have completely unrealistic expectations. But I think the fact that they are told that they're going to get a call right back and they're going to get an email with further information, that is satisfactory to 98% of the people that call my office. For some people, that's completely unacceptable. I get lots of, you know, emails from Smith that said they wanted to talk to an attorney right now and they didn't want to wait for a call back and they hung up. Okay. But for most people that are reasonable, they're okay with getting an email. They're okay with getting a call back from the intake person. Part of her job is to educate them as well about what the process is, what information she can give them, that her role is to gather information for me so I can assess their case to see if we would work well together. So that's something that I charge, you know, to her, and I've trained her to sort of work with the client in a way to sort of, so they can sort of work well together and make the client feel like their concerns are being heard and they're not wasting their time, even if it's a case that I'm not trying, that I can't help them with. So I do also have emails for resources. If I can't take their case, I'm referring you out. Here's Atlanta Bar Association. There's just a lot of things that I do in addition to just answering the calls.
And you're thinking about that client experience, right? So I think that's
right.
One of the things that you've probably heard me talk about, you talk about a lot. You know, when you're on the phone with, or when a representative sort of your firm is on the phone with a potential client, you can get a positive or negative review on Google based on that experience alone. You know,
yes.
They were really friendly and helped me and put me in touch with another firm, or they really just shooed me off the phone. That can be the difference between a 5-star and a 1-star review. Like, how many times have you gone to a restaurant and had a bad experience, even though the food was great? You know, that's going to influence your review the same way that it doesn't have to be actually a legal engagement where you have a review being generated for your firm. So easily avoid that, and maybe even easily build positive reputation. There are a couple questions that are coming around the intake coordinator though, Regina. So
I pay her per hour.
Okay, so the intake coordinator is paid per hour, and they also, are they reviewing with you, alongside you, independently, and then presenting sort of their recommendation to you to move forward with a client? How much sort of control and independence do they have to make a decision whether or not to, you know, keep someone in the pipeline?
Well, she has a lot. So if it's going to be an uncontested case, quite frankly, I'll take anybody as long as they are clear about the parameters of what an uncontested divorce is. And I usually go a step further than some attorneys where I say, look, these are all the categories that you have to agree on. Because if you don't have an agreement and you pay us and it turns out you don't have an agreement, you've wasted your money. So for those people, I'm not that particular about. But in terms of if it's someone I'm going to be working with for a long time, she knows the personalities of people that I want to work with. So if someone is unreasonable, if somebody is rude, if there's just a lot of things that she knows where she'll tell me, I don't think you want to work with this person, or I think this person might have unreasonable expectations, or conversely, I really like this guy. He spoke highly of you. He has reasonable expectations. He seemed really excited about the consultation. She kind of gives me feedback about the clients to help me make a decision of whether I want to meet with people. So someone's asking, do you think it's unreasonable to skip an intake specialist and answer my own phones? I will never advocate anybody to answer their own phone, especially as a lawyer. It's just, it takes up way too much of your time. You're going to get a whole bunch of tire kickers. You're going to get sucked into these people's sad stories and want to help them. And you'll just find yourself giving away the farm. And I'm able to avoid all of that because I'm not on the phone. And, you know, we're human, and a lot of us as attorneys, we became attorneys because we wanted to help people, and that's just our nature. But we cannot spend all of our time on the phone with potential clients because it's just taking away from the actual work, and not to mention peace of mind and all that other. So I do not recommend anyone answering their own phone.
Regina, one thing that I'll add on there that often is overlooked. Marie Eves, you mentioned, you know, this question to Regina, and I'll also say that if you are solo and if you have the time, whether or not you're solo, to answer your own phones, there is an opportunity cost of that free time already. It's not just could you be working on a matter, on a case, right, with a client. It's also, could you be networking? Could you be working on your business, building email templates and forms and better integration with your software? Could you be writing and being an authority on subject matters in your community or for others, teaching CLEs? Like, what are all the other things besides practicing law that only you can do that you can't outsource or automate or delegate? Because if you're not thinking around the opportunity cost and the fact that, sure, you can get a loan for money, but you can't get a loan for 25 hours in a day instead of 24. That is your most limited resource. So there is a cost to answering the call and spending the time doing that, even if you're not so busy that it's time that's the constraint based on pressure that's coming to you. Think about the other benefits and, you know, additions to your business that you can bring to accelerate growth by not answering the phone and instead choosing to do something that only you can do that you can't outsource.
Right. So Olivia asked a great question, which is, for contested divorce, did the intake coordinator send out the agreement? No. So I actually sort of skipped a step. So I'm glad you asked that question. I only like to meet with people that fit the criteria that I kind of talked about earlier, and I'll go back over it. Do they have an issue I can fix? Is it an issue that I want to fix? Can they afford my services? That is key. So I put it out there. My fees are on my website. So my flat fees, and they're not cheap, they're on there. So it actually weeds out a lot of people, and it's actually in my intake form. And before I forget, I'll refer you all to my Facebook page, which is Lawyer on the Beach, because all of my forms are there. There's tons of forms. I actually have a 45-minute Dubsado video, and actually I have posted my intake form for Smith, which is like 2 pages long. So you can download all that stuff and hijack it, plagiarize it, do whatever you want. But Smith actually in their intake, it can answer that question. They're empowered to ask, how much is a modification of custody going to cost? And the answer is the initial flat fee is usually between $7,500 and $20,000. Well, a lot of people hang up at that point, which quite frankly is fine with me. So in order for them to have a consultation with me, my intake person, Lisa, after I review the notes, and if it's a modification or something like that, I review the documents, look who the opposing counsel is, look who the attorney is, whatever information I need to set a fee, I'll just tell her to tell them, you can come in for a consultation. We just want you to let you know that the initial fee is probably going to be in the range of $10,000. Are you okay with that? And they say yes, then I go through with the consultation. Because there's nothing worse than charging someone $400 for a consultation. You tell them the fee is $10,000, and you might as well have said $10 million. I know that there's plenty of people out there preaching that you do not discuss price before they have the consultation. Do what you want to do. Personally, for me, this has worked. I think it also has to do with whether or not you have a lot of calls. If you're getting one potential client call a week, don't discuss price on the phone, because you want that client in your office. If you're getting a lot like me, you don't need every client to come in your office, and you want the people to hire you to be able to comfortably afford you, because otherwise it's a pretty weird dynamic when they've emptied out their entire savings account. So I just prefer to sort of pre-screen on the issue of whether or not they can afford me.
So one of the other questions that's coming through, Regina, is around the format. So it might be helpful to just take a step back. Maybe there are people who came in a little bit late, just to share again that intake form is hosted online. It doesn't require, having access to a certain version of Adobe Acrobat for filling out a PDF. It's really just an online form like you would have on any website where you're checking out a card on Amazon.
So, I have about 20 different forms. The form that I give to Smith is specific to them. So I know when the form came through, it's because Smith answered the call. I have forms for my Google My Business page for all 3 of my locations. I have discount forms for referrals. How do I get up to 20? But I have 20. I have 20 different forms. So I know exactly where the form is coming from. So, and I've actually posted a link to the Facebook group, which actually has a link in the About section to all of my forms. So the other thing I kind of wanted to say is, in terms of, I know it's difficult for true souls not to want to answer the phone. I like to think of myself as Oprah sometimes. I am not Oprah, I get it, but I think of myself as her sometimes. If you called the production company for Oprah, do you really expect Oprah Winfrey to answer the phone? Do you really expect that when you call, if someone answers the phone, you say, "Hi, may I please speak to Oprah Winfrey right now?" And they said, "Sure, hold on, she's coming to the phone." So, and I know it sounds a little conceited or whatever, but you kind of have to think of yourself in a position of, I'm a working attorney, I'm hard at work, clients should not expect me to be sitting by the phone and answering the call. And I think reasonable people expect that, just as if they were calling someone like her, would they expect her to answer the phone, or would they expect that there be some sort of process in order to have a conversation with her? And that's kind of how I've thought about it. And that's kind of why I started to feel less guilty, because I used to answer my own phones. But that's how I got over it. I said, nope, Oprah doesn't answer her phone. I'm not answering my phone either.
Well, Regina, there's also sort of the point of scaling. So if you have growth objectives, for the next 3 years, we know about 86% of attorneys say that they want to grow their firm in the next 3 years. How do you train clients also to have reasonable expectations for your responsiveness? And I think there's sort of an untethering that needs to happen between what is a responsive expectation you have for your firm. For customer support companies, they talk about your SLA. What is your service level that you're committed to? Regina, you're committed to a very high degree of responsiveness, but responsiveness for your firm doesn't mean you are tethered to your phone, and when you're taking a shower, you have your ringer all the way up, right? Because what does that mean? It means that client, from the very beginning to the very end, to every referral that they make, they're going to say to their friends and family, "Oh, Regina's so responsive, just call her, here's her cell phone number, God help you." So, and that's not rare, actually. So, what ends up being a more sustainable and scalable approach that doesn't breed resentment in you as the attorney who's running the firm is also, I like the time I get to spend with my clients. I'm able to be responsive, but it doesn't have to be me who's always the responsive one, because most people just want validation in being heard and being listened to and in being taken care of. That doesn't have to be a burden on you.
Correct. So I think that the point of sort of having these sort of filters is it sets expectations from the beginning. No one's going to call and get me on the phone immediately. And a lot of you that have already in my group, you know that I kind of have what I consider to be sort of a controversial policy of I don't accept phone calls, period. You cannot call my office and ever get me on the phone live. I don't care if you're a judge. I don't care if you're opposing counsel. You're not going to get me on the phone live. That's just my policy. That's why I have an answering service. The answering service will answer the call live. They will not transfer it to me. They'll send me a message. I'll review it. And if it's important, for example, if the judge is trying to schedule something, I will call them back. And I put that in my fee agreement so the potential client knows from the beginning that that's sort of the expectation, but I don't know where we sort of, I mean, I do know it was the cell phone era, but we sort of have got into this expectation that we have to be accessible to everybody all the time. And I don't think that's accurate. And if you start off that way and then taper off throughout the representation, that's what the client's going to remember. So I start with how it's going to end, which is, you know, there's going to be a filter before you can get me on the phone, but you are still getting the valuable information that you need from the people that work for me and that I've trained to give you the information that I need. It doesn't have to come from me. And I think if you set that expectation at the beginning and you follow through with it, it leads for a better client experience overall.
So are paralegals allowed to join your Facebook group, and maybe other people who are not paralegals or attorneys? How do you?
At this point, I have it set to attorneys only.
Okay.
And I just kind of did it at the beginning because I was trying to filter out people that were trying to sell stuff to people, because it's not about that. My group is just really a community of people that work virtually, and obviously flat fees and doing intake like this is part of it. So it really was geared directly towards to attorneys.
So what are some of the ways that you would say client expectations are changing now based on COVID, Regina? Are you seeing any sort of shift? Are you changing
and
any
it's
of your
for
processes?
the better. It is definitely for the better, because their expectations are lower, quite frankly, as opposed to before. It's people call and say, hey, I've been married for 50 years. I want to be divorced tomorrow. No, like things take time. And now with COVID, everybody just sort of assumes that everything is going to take time. So I really didn't I wasn't really proactive in, you know, telling clients, hey, things aren't really going to slow down. I just let them assume what they thought, and they're genuinely happy with, oh my goodness, I didn't know that you could get my divorce completed with COVID, and I didn't know your firm was still working. So I have felt that, especially with potential clients, that they are much more tolerant and patient than they were before all of this. It was just get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. And now people are okay with waiting for a callback. They're okay with my intake process. They're okay with assumed consultations, which I would do them before, but a lot of people wanted to come in and didn't really bother me. I've got an office. I live 5 minutes from it. I'll come in and meet you. I got to put on pants at some point. But now that during COVID, now everyone knows that everything has to be virtual, it was just an immediate shift and there's no pushback. Now that people are forced to do it, it's not a problem. So I'm sort of hoping that after this sort of died down and we're going back to courts, that clients will still realize that this is a perfectly legitimate way to meet your attorney or to conference with your attorney, and it helps save, you know, cost. Courts are doing, you know, hearings virtually, which is saving them time and not having to take an entire day off of work. You know, there's okay, Christy sent me an email. Can a virtual paralegal, Christy, just join the group? I will accept you. That's fine.
Special dispensation.
Yes, I'm making an exception, Christy. Send me just log on to the group and then invite you. You can be.
Mention the webinar, right?
Someone asked about an intro video. That's actually a great question because I'm in the middle of doing that now. So I have about 20 different 2-minute videos that I need to deploy. And I've got some that are geared towards the intake process, what to expect next from your attorney. You can create that and build that into your workflow at any point. So I wouldn't recommend doing it on the first go round, but if it's someone that after you have pre-screened them, especially for conflict checks, for goodness sake, please do your conflict checks after you get the initial intake form. So maybe on the second email, once you pass the conflict check, it's something that you're interested in, then maybe send them some of these videos that talk about your process, how to work with you, what it's going to be like working with you, and also specific to their particular case. Because I practice about 9 different areas of family law, so I could just shoot off a video that specifically is tailored to what that particular person is calling about. I'm also doing Canva, a Canva sort of intro booklet that is going to be sent out, I believe, after the first email, after I've done the conflict check, to give a more sort of overview of what it's going to be like to work with us. I want the client to be able to visualize the experience of working with us and to know what the expectations are from the very beginning.
So Regina, what are you using for these videos? How do you produce them? Are you uploading them to YouTube, or are you sort of widely circulating them? Where do they live? Are they searchable on your website? What's the?
Oh, they're all over the place. It's completely scattershot because I don't really do a ton of marketing. So who did the videos is a guy, oh, I cannot remember his name, but the name of the site is, I think it's called Real Lawyers. I believe he created Super Lawyers and then sold it to Reuters and then started his own thing, which is basically a database of attorneys and that have a whole bunch of videos. So I'm going to check to make sure that that's the correct.
And in the meantime, so Canva, for people who heard Regina mention that, that's actually a really good site for presentations, for social media cards and graphics and things like that. You can use it for free, and then there's also paid options. There we go, Real Lawyers.
Yes, and I'm trying to find my page on it, but every attorney gets their own page. I think he did 20 videos and it was only about an hour of shooting time. It was pretty well done. So I just haven't deployed them yet. So, and it actually doesn't even have to be fancy. And I've seen plenty of people that upload videos. There's just the iPhone in a car talking, or they're talking about a recent win. Quite frankly, especially with criminals and not criminals, criminal clients and PI clients, those attorneys are turning out videos on a pretty consistent basis. So it really doesn't have to be fancy. But oh yes, Loom video is great. Also, I do use Loom for demonstration videos as well. So that, again, all of this can be deployed automatically in your intake system as soon as someone calls and talks to you. The next thing they get is a video that directly relates to the problem that they called about. I mean, that's just great advertising for your firm, and it should confirm in their mind that you are the firm to work with.
It's also great that you're the one explaining, and it's not giving something, to read, but easily forwarded. If someone has been in touch with you, they're talking in their, friend or peer group, they can forward that video that they can easily search for, maybe in their email. There are a couple questions around sort of wraparound services, Regina. So what other support staff do you use? Obviously, there's accounting, tax professionals, maybe finance professionals. What else beyond the virtual receptionist and intake specialist in terms of your support staff do you rely on?
I only have one. I have one full-time paralegal, and that's it. So occasionally I will contract out and have a contract attorney, because I've been kind of virtual for a while. I'm actually in Arizona now, and I have been for like 6 weeks, even though my firm is in Georgia. So sometimes I use contract attorneys to go to court or do mediations. But other than that, I have one paralegal, and that's it. I used to have a much larger firm. No, not against anyone that has a larger firm. It simply was not right for me, and I decided to scale down, and it was just going to be me and a paralegal, and it's been that way for 3 years, and it's great. I work 18 hours a week, and I make more than I did when I was working a lot more than that. So that's just kind of the business structure that I've set up for myself that I like. Somebody asked, so Maddie put, if you want to get contract attorneys, there are some services that you can use. Angel asked, what part of your intake process yields the most lucrative clients? I can kind of tell based on the initial notes whether or not it's going to be decent. I am actually trying to niche down even further. So I'm only family law, and I'm in the Atlanta metro area. But I want to take a specific county, which is Gwinnett County, which is a fairly large county in Georgia, and I only want to do divorce. So that's as specific as it gets. I want to do one type of law in one county, and that's it. And there's plenty of divorces to be had. So whenever I see something that comes across that's divorce in Gwinnett, that's priority. I get it over to her right away. And she also knows that there's a specific thing to talk to them about, that I used to be president of the Gwinnett Family Law Bar Association, that I have an office right across from the courthouse. So she knows how to highlight things that the client would care about and that is relevant to their particular issue. So that's an important thing that the intake coordinator really needs to be trained on. Is it's not about me. I mean, by the time they call me, I'm all over the internet. I'm super Googleable. People know who I am. They know I'm capable of doing what I'm doing. I've been doing it for 20 years. But that is less important than how can I actually help them? How am I going to make them feel? How am I going to get them from point A to point B? Because right now they're miserable. If it's a dad calling who's not legitimated, he's got no rights to his kids, he's paying child support for a kid that he can't even see, how can we help him see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is at the end of this case, you are going to have a parenting plan. You are going to have parenting time with your child. You know, that's the light at the end of the tunnel that they have to be shown at the beginning. And we just kind of have to connect the dots, and they just have to trust that we are the people to have to get from point A to point B. And that's kind of what intake is about.
Regina, I think that you just expressed, just by your facial expression, but also what you said, a really key component in this process of intake. And you were so encouraging right there, and so motivating and positive. How does that play into maybe your training with the intake specialist, your first consultation? Does that sort of momentum and positivity that you just brought to us right here play into how you interact with clients? Do you feel like that's a really important component to make sure you're in the right mindset and smiling, and that's coming through in your tone? How does that relate to that sales process and really going from intake to retainer and winning the client?
I mean, I hope so, because I mean, your employees, it's a trickle down effect. If you're rude, if you're dismissive of people that might call that don't have the ability to afford your services, and you treat them with disdain, or you laugh at them, you know, with your employees, I mean, that is, it's just kind of an infection that's going to infect your whole business. And that's just not what we're about. Obviously, there are going to be people that I can't service. Thankfully, there are attorneys all across the spectrum. There are attorneys that aren't going to get out of bed for less than $50,000 retainer. That's fine. There are other attorneys that will work with you on a sliding scale and that will accept your case for a lot less money. So, you know, I can refer some clients there. So just because a client isn't right for you doesn't mean they're not right for somebody. And I think it's important to just sort of, you know, permeate your firm with the attitude that you want them to have. So both of my employees know that I love what I do. A lot of family law attorneys don't like it. I do. I love what I do. I love helping people. I love being able to get them from kind of the dark days over, you know, to the light. And that's what we're all about. And it starts from the very first person that they talk to. And my intake person is just really great in terms of her personality. And she knows when people call and they say something, you know, a particular fact that's horrible, not just they're going through divorce, but you know, that I had cancer surgery last week. She knows that, you know, to be empathetic and to say, I know this is a hard time. I'm not going to pretend to understand what you're going through, and we're going to help you get you through the next stage of your life as painlessly as possible. Like that's our job. That's our mission. Another thing that we highlight is we don't take a lot of cases. My max caseload is 40. So that means that I'm not going to be swamped, that I'm going to have time to actually dedicate to, you know, each person's case, because I'm not overloaded. Someone asked if there are any tools that I use to train my intake specialist. Not a tool, I actually use the person. So I used to have a paralegal who actually is a consultant, and I'm going to try to find her information and drop it. Hold on. So she actually, I think she does it full-time now. So she consults with different family law attorneys about their practice, but she used to do my intake, so she helped train my new intake person, and we just kind of tweaked it along the way. But there's probably lots of people that can train you on intake. I know Billy Terracio.
Yeah, Modern Law Firm. I was just going to say
I cannot pronounce her last name. I'm so sorry.
Terracio, I think.
Okay, so she, I'll just try to find her law firm and link it. But she actually did an intake seminar or webinar, and it was really,
it was an amazing deal. It was like such a steal for 26 courses or something.
It was a lot, and I actually signed up, and I haven't gotten through the whole thing, because even though I feel like I have the intake process down, I love to take certain ideas, and she does family law and she does it in Arizona. But I kind of like to see what other people are doing, and because I absolutely will take ideas from somebody else. I wasn't using Dubsado until 1.5 years ago, and somebody mentioned it, and I've been off and running ever since. So I like to kind of see what other people are doing and see if there's a way that I can integrate it into my practice.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We're at the top of the hour. It's 4 o'clock Eastern now, and Regina, just thank you so much for your time. Everyone here has been raving the entire time about how valuable this was. How do they get in touch with you? Through Facebook, in your group? Is that the ideal way?
Yeah, that's the ideal way. So if you join the group, people message me all the time. People put posts, and then just to let everyone know, I try to keep the group super focused. It's on virtual lawyering, tools for virtual lawyering, intake process, just about that. So I know that there's groups about marketing and about substantive areas of law. My group is just focused on how to deliver services to your client in this virtual era. And I started the group in July of 2019. And obviously when COVID started, it became really popular because we were kind of doing the virtual thing already. But we just kind of try to keep it tailored to how do we deliver services to our client and how do we use technology to help us do that and to help free our time, our headspace, so we're not, working like dogs, that we have plenty of time to enjoy our lives, to enjoy our kids, our families, things outside of our professional life, because that's the goal, is to have a life instead of just to have a career.
Wonderful. Well, Regina, thank you so much. Anyone, if you are inspired and would like to sort of take a load off and reclaim some of that balance, Smith.ai is here for you. We do have the special that I mentioned. I'll reiterate it once more, which is use code SmithCovid19. That's SmithCovid19. Tell us that Regina sent you, but we're doing an extra special offer right now through May for not only the 20 call, 20 chat free trial, but also 20 calls and 20 chats free with your first month of service. We have plans as low as $140 a month and even can customize down lower than that if you need assistance and just want a very, very small plan. Let us know. We will also do free white glove setup of our AI chatbot. We know more people are on their screens and need discretion for quiet conversations in close quarters, at home with children and multiple generations. So we want to be able to provide that answering for you on calls, on website chat, on text messages, and through Facebook now as well. We're also adding services like conflict checks, and we are officially, I just saw on Slack that I'm allowed to tell you this, 24/7. So that is, to me, one of the biggest achievements for Smith.ai, and we are better equipped than ever to serve you. So please give us a try and just let us carry some of your load. It's really important that with all of these processes, you just get in the habit of handing things off, and the stress will fall off as quickly as you're able to sort of document processes, get some forms in place, and make that handoff. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining us. We will do more of these soon, and we'll keep you informed. Take care, everyone.
All right, thanks. Bye, everybody.